The first light of morning in the countryside is never sudden. It comes slowly, almost tenderly, creeping over the horizon until the dark fields turn, first to shadowed gay, then to a pale wash of color. The rooster crow carries across the stillness, answered there and there by another, as if the villagers are waiting in chorus. From low cottages with thatched roofs, thin threads of smoke rise as hearths are stirred back to life. A new day of work is beginning. It always does, steady and unbroken. In the fudge is the high of pulse, the warmth of the fire pushes back the chill. A mother sets her hands to the bread she left to rise overnight, kneading it with the quiet rhythm of one who has done this each morning for years. Children rub their eyes and shuffle toward the door to fetch water from the well. The father pulls on his boots, rough leather stiff with wear, and reaches for the wooden yoke that they sit across his shoulders. His tools lean ready against the wall: hoe, sickle, plowshare waiting to be carried out. Step out and the air is sharp with dew. Grass sparkles faintly in the grow light, and the thatch of cottages glistens. The night mist clings. The ground is soft beneath the boots of those heading to the fields, their figures outlined against the dim horizon. Some carry baskets, others lead oxen or horses, and still others walk with only their own strength to guide the day work. The village stirs like a single living body, first one family at their gate, then another, until the paths fill with purposeful movement. The sounds of morning labor soon blend together, the creak of wagon wheels as a cart begins its slow journey down the track, the lowing of cattle, impatient to be led to pasture, the bleat of goats they crowd at the fence, eager for the day grazing. Dogs bark and dart in circles, already alert to their duties, as guardians of flock and home. Across the air, a blacksmith hammer begins its measured ring, faint then clear in the quiet, though the village heartbeat has begun to keep time. For most, the first task is in the fields. The soil, turned dark and rich by spring rains, waits for seed. Men and women alike take their places, bending low to scatter grain in careful arcs, their hands moving with practiced grace. The plowman drives his team forward, iron blade cutting neat furrows into the earth, the oxen breath steaming as they strain at the harness. Each pass carves a new line of hope, for in these furrows lie the meals of the year to come. But not land labor belongs to the fields. Some remain behind to tend to other duties. In the cottage yards, women spin wool on simple distaffs, the fibers twisting into thread with a rhythm ancient village itself. Children gather kindling for the hearth, their small arms full of twigs and sticks, while older boys may be sent to guard sheep at the edges of the woodland. In the lanes, a cooper begins his day by fitting staves together for a barrel, the ring of his mallet echoing gently. A potter sets his wheel turning, clay cool beneath his palms, shaping vessels that soon carry water, milk, and ale. The work of dawn is not loud, but it is steady. Each sound, each movement seems woven into the fabric of the village. If one were to pause and listen, the layers of life would emerge. The rustle of straw beds are remade, the crackle of the fire catching new wood, the quiet murmur of prayers spoken, but workers step into the day. For in this world, faith and labor are entwined. Before the plow bites the soil, a man may trace the sign of the cross. Before the weaver threads her loom, she may whisper a blessing that her cloth be strong. Work is not only survival, but also devotion, a way of joining one's hands to the steady order of creation. As the sun climbs higher, the light deep to gold, The damp fields begin to steam, and the roofs shine with fading dew. The rhythm of tools against earth and wood quick-kid. A scythe swishes through tall grass, neat strokes leaving a path of fallen stalks. A hammer thuds against wood, driving pegs into place. The wheelwright tight head spokes. The baker pulls his loaves from the oven, their crusts browned and crackling. The fragrance of bread drifts across the lanes, mingling with the sharper scent of smoke and the earthy smell of tilled ground. At the heart of it lies the simple truth: no task is too small, for each is bound to the rest. The farmer isolate will become the miller grain. The miller flour will be kneaded by the baker. The baker bread will be carried to the tay. A family gathers. The shepherd wool will be spun, woven, dyed, and sewn into garments that shield against winter chill. The blacksmith nail will hold the cooper barrel, which in turn will store the brewer ale. The world of work is a circle, each hand supporting the other, each trade leaning quietly on its neighbor. For though it is still early, the shadows are long, the day fresh. A boy driving geese toward the meadow whistles a tune. The birds hissing and flapping, ease they waddle ahead. A girl walking beside her mother balances a basket of herbs, the green leaves spilling fragrance into the air. Beyond the village, in the quiet woods, a woodcutter lifts his axe and lets it fall in measured strokes, each one echoing deep among the trees. All of it together forms the music of dawn, not a song of leisure but of purpose, steady and sure. When the church bell rings, its sound rolls across the fields and lanes. Workers pause for a moment, leaning on their tools, listening to the call. It is both a summons and a reminder that labor is good, but rest and prayer are part of the day well. A few cross themselves before returning to their tasks. Others simply nod and bend once more to their work. The bell marks the hours, shaping the day like the plow shapes the furrow, guiding all with its deep and steady tone. By mid-morning, the fair brightness of the day has taken hold. The first weariness sets in, but so too does the satisfaction of progress. Furrows stretch long across the fields. Barrels take form in the cooper yard. The blacksmith forge glows with steady heat. The village is fully alive now, each person bound to the rhythm of their craft. The dawn of work has become the day itself, unfolding hour by hour. It has done for generations and will continue for many more. When one steps back to watch, the scene is not one of toil alone. There is beauty in the rising smoke, in the gleam of sunlight on the plowshare, in the careful stroke of the potter hand. There is harmony in the balance of tasks, in the quiet cooperation of neighbors who share tools, lend oxen, or join in lifting a beam. The world of work may seem simple, but within it lies a richness deep beyond any treasure, the steady weaving of human life into the land, the shaping of raw earth and raw materials into the comforts that sustain body and spirit alike. Thus begins the day, and thus begins this journey through the many labors and crafts of medieval Europe. The village fields stretch outward from the clustered cottages like a great patchwork cloak laid upon the earth. At dawn, the mist clings low to the ground, softening the lines of the furrows until they appear be gentle shadows across the land. But as the sun climbs, the mist thins, and the full measure of the fields reveals itself. Long strips divided among families, bordered by hedges, paths, or the faint ridges left from years of plowing. Here lies the heart of sustenance, the soil from which nearly every meal will come. To step into the field is to step into the rhythm of survival. The soil is dark and damp beneath the boots, smelling of earth and roots. Each clod turned by the plow releases a fragrance both raw and rich, a reminder of fertility. Birds circle overhead waiting to swoop down and seize the worms uncovered by the blade. Already, crows gather along the hedges, their black shapes stalk against the brightening sky, watching for the scattered seed. The work of plowing is slow but steady. A man guides the handles of the heavy wooden plow, his shoulders bent with effort, while the oxen lean into their harness, their broad hooves pressed deep into the mud, breath steaming from wide nostrils as they strain forward. With each pass, the iron tip carves another furrow, turning the soil in long ribbons that catch the light. The man murmurs soft commands, clucking his tongue, praising or chiding the needed, for the beasts are his partners as much as his tools. Alongside the plowmen walk the sowers. They carry sacks of seed slung at their hips, dipping one hand after another into the grain, scattering it in wide, practiced sweeps. The gesture is almost graceful, like the arc of a dance, seed fanning out to settle in the open earth. Each cast must be even, neither too heavy nor too thin, for the field bounty depends on the sower hand. Children may trail behind, pat soil lightly with sticks or stamping clods flat to press the seed deeper. In spring is barley and oats that fill the air with promise, their pale kernels scattering tiny beads of hope. Later in the year, wheat takes its place, golden and prized for the bread it had one day become. Peas and beans are tucked into their own plots, destined to boil in humble stews. Flax is sown for linen, its seeds small and shining, while turnips and cabbages wait their season. The field is not a single crop, but a chorus, each plant carrying its own part in the survival of the community. The year unfolds in cycles. In the tender weeks of early spring, the ground is softened, furrows shaped, and seed sown with careful prayers. Summer brings the green surge of growth, stalks swaying in the warm wind, flowers opening to the sun. Autumn is the time of scythes and sickles, of sweat on the brow sheaves are bound and stacked high. Winter, though bare and still, is not idle, manure spread, hedges mended, tools repaired by firelight. Always the fields call, each season demanding its own lab bow. To watch a harvest is to see the fields at their most alive. Men swing scythes in wide arcs, the sharp blades whispering through the stalks. Behind them, women gather the fallen grain into bundles, binding them with straw cords, their fingers quick and sure. Children run between rows, chasing away birds that swoop down to steal the kernels. Laughter mingles with sweat, for though the labor is hard, there is joy in abundance. The stubbled ground fills with neat stooks of grain, golden pyramids catching the sunlight, like treasures rising from the soil. The rays we heart of letting with a life of to let light in some person. There are years when rain comes too heavy, drowning the seed in mud, or when drought cracks the earth and withers the tender shoots. Hail may fall, flattening a crop in a single afternoon. Insects may swarm, leaving fields stripped bare. The villagers know these risks well. They carry the weight of hunger in their memory, for no harvest is guaranteed. Still they rise each morning to work, because the field is both mercy and necessity. Its soil is fickle. It is the only hope they hold. Even in harder years, the rituals remain. Before sowing, a priest may walk the boundary of the fields, sprinkling holy water, chanting blessings, and invoking the saints to guard the seed. Crosses of straw or carved wood may be planted at the corners, silent guardians against blight and storm. At Rogam Kunad, the parishioners walk in solemn procession around the bounds, singing hymns, asking for fertility, for fair weather, for deliverance from famine. In such acts, the villagers place their toil within a larger order, hoping that the sweat of their hands will be matched by heaven favor. Tools mark the rhythm of the field, the wooden plow, heavy yet dependable, bound with iron at its point. The harrow dragged behind oxen to rake clods and smooth the earth. The sickle with its curved blade perfect for reaping handfuls of grain, and the long scythe slicing wide swaths with each swing. These tools are cared for with diligence, blades sharpened on whetstones, handles mended, iron repaired by the blacksmith. A broken tool may delay a harvest, and delay can mean hunger. The fields are not empty of sound, the low groan of oxen, the rustle of stalks, the creak of harness leather. Over it, the voices of workers rise and fall, calling to one another, singing to keep the rhythm, laughing despite the toil. A simple song, repeated across hours, helps the scythe keep time, helps weary arms endure. Children join in, their voices higher, bright a bird song against the deeper chant of their elders. Together, the labor is softened, shared not only in burden but in spirit. When the day grows hot, workers pause to rest in the shade of hedges or under the spread of a lone tree. They sit in circles, sharing bread, cheese, and small ale carried from the cottages. Hands rough with soil hold wooden cups, passing them carefully one to another. Conversation drifts easily, talk of weather, of neighbors, of the year hopes, laughter rises too, even in hardship, for the field has always bid both toil and fellowship. After the brief respite, they rise again, returning to the furrows, refreshed enough to continue. At times, the field seems almost to speak, the whisper of wheat in a breeze, the hum of bees weaving between flowers, the caw of rooks circling overhead. In summer, the scent of warm grain is thick and sweet, like the promise of bread already baking. In autumn, the air is sharper, filled with dust and the tang of straw. In winter, the ground lies quiet, but even then there is sound, the crunch of frost underfoot, the distant bark of a dog, the faint rush of wind across the stubble. Always the field has its voice, and always it is tied to the work of human hands. As evening falls, the last light slants across the land, gilding the furrows with fire. Workers straighten their backs, stretch their arms, and gather tools for the walk home. The oxen are unyoked, their hides dark with sweat and led slowly toward the byre. The sower sack hangs empty, the scythe is laid aside, the baskets filled with veg sheaves. A calm settles, the day effort folded into the earth itself. The fields, though vast and silent at night, are never truly at rest. The seeds lie beneath the soil, hidden but alive, waiting for sun and rain to rouse them into growth. The furrows, dark and even, hold the memory of the plowman guiding hand. The land carries the story of labor, written each day by those who depend on it. So the villagers return to their cottages, weary but content, the day work behind them. Tomorrow and the next day, and the countless days to come, they will walk again into the fields. For in the furrows lies life itself, fragile, uncertain, yet endlessly renewed. The world of work begins and ends there, in soil turned by hand and hoof, in seed cast into earth, in the hope that from labor will come sustenance, and from sustenance the quiet strength to endure. Beyond the tilled fields and the clustered cottages, wait hedges give way to open meadow and rolling hills, another kind of work unfolds. Here the land is wide, and instead of furrows carved in straight lines, there is only the sweep of grass, the shadow of trees, and the slow movement of animals grazing in the dawn. This is the world of the shepherd, the goatherd, the swineherd, keepers of the creatures upon which village life depends. The day begins early, often before the first plowshare cuts the soil. A boy or girl pull on a woolen cloak and lifts a crook, stepping lightly across the dew-wet ground. From pens and byres the animals stir, sheep bleating, goats pushing at gates, pigs snuffling impatiently for release. The herder calls softly, a whistle or a word known to the flock, and the gates are opened. The animals tumble out, a wave of wool, hide, and bristled hair spilling into the lane. Dogs dart alongside, tails high, barking to keep the herd together. Sheep are the most common companions of the pasture. Their wool is wealth, spun into thread, woven into cloth, dyed into colors that brighten even the humblest tunic. Yet the sheep themselves seem unaware of their importance. They nibble at the grass, heads down, moving in slow clusters that drift the clouds across the meadow. Each animal carries its own mark, a notch in the ear, a dab of paint on the fleece, so the herder knows which family it belongs to when the flock returns at evening. Goats, by contrast, are restless, nimble, forever curious. They scramble onto rocks, stretch high to nibble leaves, and test the patience of the one charged with guiding them. Their milk is sweet, their hides sturdy, their meat a welcome dish when slaughter occurs. A skilled goatherd learns to read their moods, to call them back from dangerous ledges, to laugh at their mischief even while muttering at the trouble they cause. Swineherds lead their charges not to meadows but to the edges of the forest. There, under oaks and beeches, the pigs root for acorns and nuts, their snouts grubbing eagerly in the leaf litter. The air rings with their grunts and squeals, a chorus of rough music beneath the trees. Though pigs may seem unruly, the swineherd knows them well, calling them back when they wander too far, guiding them with sticks and whistles. In autumn especially, when the mast falls heavy, the forest floor becomes a banquet, and the pigs fatten swiftly. The herder work is not only guiding but watching. Eyes scan the horizon for danger. A fox slip near, a wolf shadow at the edge of the wood, even a stranger approaching the flock. Dogs trained for the task remain vet alert, circling, nipping at strays, their sharp barks a warning to all who might threaten. At night, when the animals are penned once more, the herder sleeps lightly, ears attuned to any sound of distress. To lose an animal is to lose food, wool, leather, and the hard-earned trust of the village. Yet the life of the pasture is not only vigilance, it is also solitude, patience, and a strange kind of peace. While the animals graze, the herder sits on a stone or grassy rise, watching the clouds drift overhead, listening to the hum of bees and the soft tearing sound of mouths pulling at grass. Hours may pass in this stillness, broken only by the need to steer the flock toward fresh pasture or away from the tempting shoots of a neighbor field. The staff or crook becomes both tool and companion, a reminder of duty and of the quiet authority the herder holds over the creatures in their care. Songs often rise in these lonely hours. simple tunes carried on the wind, sung to pass the time or to calm the flock. Some are old memory verses taught by elders, others improvised in the moment, shaped to the rhythm of footsteps or the barking of a dog. A shepherd's song may be soft and lilit, echoing across the hillside, so that another herder far away may answer with a verse of their own. Thus conversation takes place, not in words but in melodies drifting across the fields. Children often serve herders, learning responsibility at a young age. They grow skilled in watching animals, mending small hurts, guiding dogs, their eyes sharpen, their patience length. Many tales tell of kings and saints who once were shepherd boys, for the work teaches humility, endurance, and care. The shepherd learns to value each sheep, not for grandeur, but for its quiet role in sustaining life. The year shapes the herder labor just as it does the farmer. Spring brings lambing time when new life totters on unsteady legs, bleating thinly for their mothers. The shepherd watches carefully, aiding when needed, warming a weak lamb beneath a cloak. Summer fills the meadows with rich grasses, and the flocks grow sleek, their wool thickening beneath the sun. Autumn is shearing time, clippers snipping fleece away in soft piles, leaving the sheep bare and awkward for a while. Winter is hardest, snow covering the pasture, food scarce, nights long and cold. Then the herder must provide hay and fodder, watching the animals closely for signs of illness. Shearing day is a festival of work. Families gather to help, sheep pressed gently to the ground, fleece rolled off in great mats, thick and warm to the touch. Children laugh at the odd, thin look of the shorn sheep while women collect the wool in baskets, washing and carding it until it is ready to spin. The herder, weary yet satisfied, knows that each fleece is a treasure, destined to become cloth for tunics, cloaks, or blankets to guard against the cold. Swainherds too know their own season. When the time comes to slaughter pigs, the village gathers for the work. Though the task is bloody, it is also a feast, for every part of the animal will be used, meat, salt, and hung, fat rendered, skin cured, bones boiled for broth. The herder, who tended the animals through the year, takes pride in their strength and weight, knowing his diligence has brought plenty to many tables. In novice labor there is a closeness to the land itself. The herder learns the paths of streams, the shade of certain trees, the places where grass grows thickest or where wolves may prowl. They read the weather in the clouds, sense the change of seasons in the air, know by instinct when rain will fall or frost will come. To guide animals is also to know the earth they walk upon, to walk with them across the same paths, to drink from the same streams, to feel the same wind. Evenings are gentle in the herder world. As the sun dips low, the flock is there, urged homeward along familiar tracks. Dust rises under hooves, bells on collars tinkle softly, dogs trot close to keep stragglers in line. At the pen or by, families wait, counting their animals, greeting the herder, offering thanks. The gates close, the animals settle, chewing quietly as the stars appear. The herder leans on his staff, weary year content, knowing the day work has been fulfilled. Then the night wraps the meadows in silence. The flock sleeps, the dogs curl close. The herder rests in the cottage or under the sky itself, wrapped in a cloak, listening to the distant cry of an owl. Tomorrow will come with the same duties, the same long hours, the same care. But in this repetition lies a kind of peace, the knowledge that life endures, that work sustains, that in the simple tending of animals there is both necessity and quiet grace. Thus the world of shepherds and herders flows, a life bound to creatures in fields, a rhythm of watchfulness and waiting, of song and silence, of danger and safety. In their labor, humble yet essential, the great cycle of survival continues, weaving human lives with those of beasts, and shaping the village with wool, milk, meat, and the steady companionship of flocks upon the land. Where the village lane bends toward the water, the air cools and the ground grows soft. A low stone building stands beside a broad pond, its roof dark with age, its windows powdered faintly white. Between the mill and the pond runs the chute of the mill race, channeling the water strength toward a wheel that turns with steady purpose. It is a sound that belongs to the place as surely as birdsong, a deep, patient rumble like a creature breathing in sleep. The mill wakes long before the sun stands high, and it sleeps only when the village does. The miller steps out to test the day. His clothes are rocked with flour, not only on his tunic and hood, but upon his very eyelashes and beard, a pale halo of work. He carries a wooden rake and a staff worn smooth by day. From the sluice he lifts the gate a hand width, judging the water eagerness, watching how the current gathers in quick kid. The pond surface dims and bright, tighten clouds pass, and in the shallows a pair of ducks leave a V of ripples behind. Somewhere near the reeds a kingfisher waits like a blue spark, ready to strike. Inside the mill the air is a world of itself, cool flower scents, alive with the small invisible weather of dust. It hangs in soft veils, stirred by movement, caught in the morning light that slips through gaps in the boards. Everything bears the touch of grain, the beams, the stairs, the sacks standing like blunt white pillars along the wall. Underfoot the floorboards shiver faintly with the turning of the wheel. When the miller pulls the hearse door and checks the stones, the great wooden frame creaks, its old companion stretching its joints. The mill heart is motion-guided. Water, patient and irresistible, pours through the race and presses the paddles of the wheel. The axle turns, transferring force along a line of timber and iron to a crown wheel and lantern pinion high above. Wooden teeth bite and release with a clack that is almost musical, the rhythm of work made audible. Above, two great millstones wait, the bedstone steady and the runner stone poised to revolve. Between them the grain will pass, changing in an instant from kernel to meal, yet if the stones were thinking the village hunger into bread. By the time the first cart arrives, the mill is ready. A farmer climbs down, back stiff from the road, and he and the miller greet one another with the brief fraternity of trade. Sacks are hefted, swung to the shoulder, carried across the flour-soft floor and up the stair to the receiving bin. With a practiced motion, the miller opens the mouth of a sack and the grain pours in. Oats like pale pebbles, wheat bright and sleek, barley with its faint beards. The sound is a small river of its own, a bright hiss and patter. What enters in grain must find its way to the stones. From the hopper above it slides into the shoe, a slanted trough that trembles these the millstones turn, a small iron moat, some of the damsel taps against the shoe, so the stream of grain will not clog. Tap, 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 like a tiny drummer keeping time for the deeper rumble below. As the runner turns, it draws the kernels into the grinding circle. A breath later, flour blooms, first coarse meal, then finer, then the silk-soft powder that smells of warm straw and sweetness. The miller cups a pinch, rubs it between finger and thumb, and nods. The village counts on this judgment. A miller who knows his stones can grind for porridge or for yeast, bread for rough barley loaves, or for the whiter wheaten crumbs reserved for feast days. He hears the stones, these others hear voices. If their song grows harsh, he will slacken the sluice. If it goes dull, he will raise the tentering screw to lighten the runner weight. Each adjustment is small, half a turn, a thumb breadth, but the flour tells at once. There is an old saying in the places that the miller thumb grows broad and flat from testing the meal whether true or not. The village trusts the thumb more than any tally stick. The village counts on this judgment. A miller who knows his stones can grind for porridge or for yeast, bread for rough barley loaves or for the whiter wheaten crumbs reserved for feast days. He hears the stones, these others hear voices. If their song grows harsh, he will slacken the sluice. If it goes dull, he will raise the tentering screw to lighten the runner weight. Each adjustment is small, half a turn, a thumb breadth, but the flour tells at once. There is an old saying in the places that the miller thumb grows broad and flat from testing the meal whether true or not. The village trusts the thumb more than any tally stick. Payment is taken in toll, not coin measure for measure, a lawful portion of each sack ground. A shovel worth goes into the miller chest, and the rest returns to the customer. Fairness is a matter of pride here, the scoop shown openly, the chest in plain view, the measures kept clean and known. People bring more than grain to the mill. They bring questions about weather, marriages, sick cattle, and news from the next valley. The mill is a crossroads of talk, 'cause the mill is where people must come. Flour is as necessary as breath. All day the wheel turns, sacks are hoisted with a rope and drum to the loft, swung gently by the miller arm to rest beside the bin. The stair complains as he goes up and down. A cat threads the shadows, vigilant for mice who love a mill even more than men do. Grain dust settles on the cat whiskers like frost. From time to time the miller steps aside, wipes his forehead with the back of his hand, and studies the water run. A dragonfly skims the surface, a shope of little fish turns and flashes. Where the race spills back to the stream, the water hisses white, and the wheel shadow wavers. Sometimes the water fails. In high summer, when drought lays a hot hand on the land, the pond shrinks, green scum gathering in shallow corners. The wheel turns too slowly, the stones begin to chatter, and the miller must choose grind coarsely and spare the stones, or shut the sluice and send people home to wait for rain. He bears their disappointment as best he can, but the mill cannot make flour without a river patience. Other times the river is too generous. Spring floods pound the sluice, the race swells, and the wheel thuds like a drum. The miller wedges timbers and ropes against the strain, prays the pins hold, and keeps vigil through the night, while the water rages in the dock. When the wheel must rest, the work does not. Stones wear smooth in the belly of their grooves and must be dressed. The miller lifts the runner with iron jack and props it on its edge. With a small pick, he cuts the pattern fresh furrows and lands, lines that bite and lines that polish, the geometry of hunger itself. It is patient, careful work, chipping along the curve so that grain will rake but not burn, flour will warm but not scorch. The smell of flint and stone dust mixes with the flour's sweetness, and when he is done, the runner face looks like a sunburst. He lowers it tenderly, sets the spindle, tests the balance, and smiles when the first handful of meal proves his hand true. The mission is pasture. Now will sight from the haughty recoat from an safe the mum's patient. The past solemnizer. Upon it, as extra must have a gold to have a gosh water. The touch could just my mind and they did it to Hezra. Children love the mill for its mysteries. They peer through the doorway and see dust turn to sunlight and back again. They imagine giants in the cellar rolling their shoulders to make the floor tremble. The miller sometimes shows them a little how. A grain of wheat is 3 in 1 bran, germ, and the white heart that becomes flour. He lets them pinch a bit between their fingers, watch it fall like snow. Do not run in the mill, he says gently, pointing to the turning shafts, the belts and cogs. The place is honest work, but it can be perilous for the Heatleys. The children nod solemnly and then, outside again, skip stones across the mill pond until a duck protests and paddles away. By midday, the mill is a steady song, the wheel rumble, the clicking of the damsel, the whisper of flour, altogether a lullaby for those who carry heavy lives. Women come with smaller sacks, men with larger, and sometimes the priest with tithes for the Lord granary. The mill stands between fields and tables. Everyone passes through its doors. In the lull between customers, the miller eats a heel of bread and a wedge of cheese, wiping flour from his lips with a floury hand. He reads the sky through a crack in the boards, judges how many hours of light remain. He keeps a small look of tallies, marks in charcoal, not because he distrusts his memory, but because he respects his neighbors. There are also moments of quiet grace that belong only to this place. A heron stands like a thought in the shallow edge of the pond. Swallows knit the air into invisible patterns beneath the eaves. In late afternoon, when the light turns honey-colored, the dust motes glow as if the mill were filled with tiny stars. The miller pauses, leaning on the rail of the stair, and for a heartbeat, the whole building seems to rest on the strength of water and the patience of wood. He thinks of how many sacks have passed through, how many loaves have risen, pause this wheel kept turning. Such thoughts do not puff him with pride. They tether him to the village more firmly than any rope. Toward evening, the traffic changes. Those who came early return with empty carts to fetch their flour. The miller tips the sacks from the bins, ties their mouths and chalks a mark, 1 for oats, 2 for barley, 3 for wheat. He helps hoist them into carts, shares a few words about weather and work, accepts a nod, a smile, sometimes a short prayer for the mill good fortune. A child offers him a plum for thanks. He takes it, the juice bright on his lip and thumb, a small sweetness after a day of grit. If there is gossip in the village, it sometimes gathers a foam at the sluice. The miller hears much and repeats little. He knows whose harvest will be short, who is nursing a sick mother, which marriage is troubled, which boy grew tall over winter and now carries a man's sack without stumbling. The mill makes him witness to the common hunger that binds everyone together. His discretion is part of his toll. When winter comes, the mill voice changes. Ice furs the race in lacework and slow cracks. The wheel turns more stiffly, snowfall muting the rumble to a low hush. The miller clears the sluice with a pole, breaks the glittering sheets, works quickly so the water will not choke. Some mornings it is too hard, the mill sleeps, and the village waits. Yet the stones need dressing in winter anyway. Tools must be mended, teeth replaced, ropes tarred, shutters tightened against the wind. A mill ne'er truly rests. There is danger here too, even amid calm. Flower dust can flare if a spark finds it, so the miller keeps lamps low. Wicks trimmed iron struck only on stone and not on steel. The dust is thick. He wears patience like a second tunic. He speaks softly to apprentices, shows how to set a hand on a bar, how to listen for the change in pitch that means grain is gone and stones are kissing bare. He tells them to respect the wheel, as they would respect a river. Both are generous, both indifferent, both become cruel if care is forgotten. On certain days, harvest days, feast feeds the mill works long after sunset. A lantern burns by the door, its light pooling on the step, moths batting themselves against the glass. The pond holds the sky in its dark mirror, and the sound of the wheel carries far along the sleeping hedges. In the village, ovens glow and bread rises in the mill, flour flows in a pale stream, more moonlight than meal. The miller's shadow stretches and shrinks, and he moves from lever to bin to book and back again. He is weary, but it is a full weariness, the day that makes a bed feel like grace. At last the sluice is lowered, water soft, then smooths, then falls away to stillness. The wheel clicks to a stop, the last few drops ticking from its paddles. Inside, the stones coast to silence, the damsel tapping slows and ceases, the dust settles in drifting veils. The miller sweeps the floor in broad arcs, draws the door to, and steps out into the night. Frogs sing from the ditch, and the damp lane smells of straw and rain. Somewhere a dog barks, the mill behind him holds a hush like a held breath, its strength stored for morning. Walks home along the water edge, the moon laying a pale path across the pond. The village is mostly dark now, save for a few hearth glows behind shutters. He thinks of the sacks stacked in the bakery, the hands that knead them, the loaves that will crack and sing they cool. He thinks of porridge spoons clinking against bowls, of children mouths dusted white, of travelers warmed by crust and crumb. He knows that tomorrow the cart wheels will groan again on the lane, and he will lift the sluice and set the world's small machinery back into motion. The mill keeps time with the village. It is not a place of spectacle, but of transformation, grain to flour, labor to sustenance, water to bread. Its song is the sound of need made steady and sure, and in that steadiness lies comfort. While the wheel turns, hunger is held a little at bay, while the stones sing. Winter edge grows duller, while the miller rubs flour between finger and thumb and nods. The day keeps faith with the next. The world of work is full of fires and forges, looms and loaves, but at the water lip or on the wind-scorched hill, a quiet engine hums at the heart of it. It is the mill, and the miller who tends it, and the gentle insistence of power borrowed from stream and breeze. Day after day, season after season, their labor grinds worry into sustenance, and the village sleeps more easily for the music that rises from this house of turning wood and patient stone. In the heart of the village, the lanes cross and the houses cluster close, stands a low timbered gelding that never seems quite still. Its doorway is wide, its roof vented with a small gap to let the smoke out, and its walls are darkened by years of soot. From within, the sound of iron on iron rings out, sharp and steady, a rhythm that can be heard across the square. It is the smithy, and at its center the blacksmith bends over his fire, shaping the tools and treasures on which daily life depends. Before dawn has fully broken, the smith is already at his forge. He stirs the coals with a long iron poker, coaxing them awake. A bellows hangs on stout chains. Its leather creaking bane he pulls the handle, feeding breath into the embers. With each press the fire bright tight, glowing from red to orange to a fierce white. Sparks spitting upward in showers that cling for a moment like stars. The air warms quickly, thick with the scents of ash, charcoal, and hot metal. Beside the fire lies a row of iron bars and rods, rough and dark from the smelter. These are his raw material, the veins of the earth brought into his keeping. When he lays one across the heart of the coals, it slowly shifts color from black to brown, then red, then at last to a yellow-white brilliance that seems almost alive. He waits, judging the heat with his eyes, with the feel of the metal softening under the tongs. When the time is right, he draws it out, lays it across the edval, and the hammer falls. The ring is clear and deep, echoing against the beams bouncing down the lanes out. Each strike leaves its mark, shaping the iron destiny. A plowshare takes form under his blows, its edges thinned and spread until it cut the earth clean. A horseshoe curves gradually, bent against the horn of the edval, its nail holes punched in with quick precision. A knife blade is flattened, drawn to a peat, its surface scored with the faint ripples of the hammer rhythm. Around him hang tools of every weight, hammers of men weights, tongs for every shape, chisels, punches, files. The edval itself is as much a companion nays any neighbor, its surface worn brine by years of labor, its edges nicked by the accidents of countless strikes. Against the wall rest wagon wheels awaiting iron rims, scythe-eating repair, and hinges for doors yet unbuilt. The smithy is not a place of ornament alone, but of necessity. Without its work, the farmer lacks a plow, the mill lacks gears, the carpenter lacks nails, the soldier lacks a sword. The smith labor is both brute strength and delicate art. His arms are thick with muscle, yet his ear is keen for the note of the hammer fall. He listens for the difference between a blow that shapes and one that shatters, between metal at its right heat and metal grown brittle with too much flame. His eyes catch the subtleties of color: cherry red for forging, straw yellow for tempering, blue for springing steel. In his keeping, fire and iron obey a language few others hear, a dialogue of heat, sound, and patience. Villagers come and go throughout the day. A farmer brings a broken scythe, the blade snapped bait, it meets the handle. The smith welds the pieces, hammering until the join is stronger than before. A mother brings a pot with a cracked handle, he rivets it anew, saving her from the cost of another. A youth leads in a horse, its old shoes worn thin. The smith lifts its hoof, scrapes away the dirt, nails on a new shoe with swift, sure strokes. The sound of hammering echoed in the hoarse, calm snort. At times, the forge produces finer things. A lord's steward may commission a dagger, its hilt bound in leather, its edge horned to gleaming. A urch may ask for candlesticks or a bell, the metal poured into molds and finished with chisels. When a festival approaches, the smith may craft bright buckles, spurs, or iron charms to be sold at the fair. Even in these moments of ornament, the code of his work remains the same, shaping what is hard into what is useful, giving form to the village needs. The forge has its dangers. Sparks leap, and one may burn a careless hand. The hammer may miss and strike flesh instead of iron. A bar heated too long may throw scales that sting the skin. The smith works with a kind of measured caution, knowing that mastery lies not in fear, but in respect. Apprentices, wide-eyed and eager, learn this lesson slowly, to stand firm, to grip the tongs with steady hands, to pump the bellows with a rhythm that keeps the fire alive without letting it roar out of control. The rhythm of the day is set by the forge itself. When the fire dims, the bellows wheeze. When the iron cools, the hammer must wait. Work proceeds in cycles of heat and rest, shaping and quenching. A blade once forged must be tempered, plunged hissing into water, then reheated gently to draw out its strength. The smith watches the colors chase across the steel straw, brown, purple, blue each hue, a signal of hardness or softness, resilience or brittleness. To temper well is to ensure the tool will not fail in the hand of the one who wields it. Outside, children often pause at the doorway, drawn by the glow and clangor. They watch sparks leap by fireflies, wide-eyed at the sight of metal becoming something new. The smith may pause, smile through the sweat on his brow, and hold up a nail fresh from the edval, still too hot to touch but already bearing its familiar shape. To them it seems like magic, though to him it is simply the old covenant between fire, iron, and human skill. Evening comes, and the glow of the forge shines red against the deepening dusk. The smith lays aside his hammer, plunges the last bar into the slack tub with a hiss, and lets the steam curl upward into the rafters. His arms ache, his back is weary, but his heart carries the satisfaction of visible work, tools repaired, iron shaped, the village served. He sweeps the floor, rakes the coals into embers that to sleep until morning, and hangs the bellows with they will wait for breath again. When he steps out, the night air is cool on his face, and the stars seem bright after the smoke and heat. The clang of the evil still echoes faintly in his ears, like the memory of a heartbeat. Around him, the village is quiet, yet within many homes the work of his hands is present. A knife slicing bread, a hinge creaking the door closes, a plough leaning ready for tomorrow field. His labor, though solitary, threads through every life. Thus the smith fire endues. It is not only a blaze of heat, but a symbol of transformation, of rough ore made into strength, of necessity shaped into tools, of flame tempered into service. In his work, the world of labor glows brightest, showing how skill and patience can bend even the hardest element toward the service of life. And as the forge sleeps, its warmth fading into the dark, the village itself rests more securely, knowing that tomorrow the hammer will strike again, and iron will once more yield to human will. Where the smith hammer rings with fire and iron, the carpenter world is softer, scented with resin and sawdust, filled with the steady rasp of tools against living wood. Near the edge of the village, close to the forest that provides his materials, stands a workshop of beams and planks open to the light. Its floor is littered with curls of shavings, pale ribbons, and the air is rich with the fragrance of pine, oak, and ash. Here, timber becomes house and wagon, tave and chest, cradle and coffin, the full measure of human life shaped by careful hands. At dawn, the carpenter chooses his timber. Logs lie stacked in neat piles, their ends ronked with chalk for length and eat. Oak for beams, ash for wheels, elm for yokes, pine for boards, willow for small, supple work. He runs his hand along the grain, judging strength and straightness, listening for the hollow knock that warns of weakness. Each tree carries a destiny within it. The carpenter task is to discover and coax it into form. Tools iron the walls, axes broad and narrow, adzads with curved blades for smoothing, saws of bent teeth, planes with sharp irons set fine or coarse. Chisels rest in a row, their edges gleaming wheeze they have been honed. A mallet leans nearby, its handle worn smooth by years of V's. Every tool has its own music. The saw sings with long, steady strokes. The axe thuds into wood with a deep note. The plane whispers as it glides, leaving behind a smooth, shining surface. Together they form a chorus that fills the day, as familiar to the carpenter as the sound of his own breath. The work begins with rough shaping. A log is split with wedges, each crack opening with a sharp report of the grain yields. From rough halves, boards are hewn, their surfaces leveled with axe and adze. The carpenter bends low, chips flying around his boots, sweat rising on his brow, he drives the blade true. Slowly the timber takes shape, flat when it was round, squared when it was wild. From this foundation, finer work follows. Houses themselves depend on such skill, beams notched to lock together, frames pegged with wooden pins, roofs braced with trusses cut to exact measure. The carpenter knows how to raise a wall so it did not sway, how to join rafters so they we bear the weight of snow. His eye measures not only the board in his hands, but the whole structure it is support. When the sound of hammers rises from a building site, it is the carpenter wisdom that guides the rhythm. In the workshop, smaller tasks abound. A farmer comes with a broken cartwheel, its rim split peak, it struck a stone. The carpenter and wheelwright work together, fitting new spokes, bending seasoned ash into a fresh circle, binding the rim with iron from the smith. Soon the cart will roll again, carrying sheaves from field to barn. Another villager asks for a chest broad and sturdy, with a lid that lifts on iron hinges. The carpenter planes the boards smooth, joins them tight, and carves a simple pattern along the edges. It will hold clothing, tools, or perhaps a dowry when the time comes. Children peer into the workshop to watch. They see curls of wood spill lick hair from the plane, smell the sweetness of fresh-cut oak, hear the regular rasp of the saw. Sometimes the carpenter lets them collect the shavings, which they these kindling for their mother hearths. He may show them how a peg fits into a mortise, or how two boards, carefully lend, join so snugly that no light shows through the seam. To them it seems like magic, but to him it is simply patience, practice, and the knowledge of grain and tool. Every stage of life is touched by this craft. A newborn lies in a cradle whose rockers were shaped D. A family gathers at a table whose legs were turned smooth under these rafters. A bride dowry chest stands in the corner, bound with bands cut and fitted in this shop. And when life ends, the coffin is built with equal care, each board joined with quiet dignity. The carpenter hand thus marks beginnings and endings alike, holding within it the rhythm of human time. Season and weather matter read too. Green wood is lively, eager to warp and split, so much must be seasoned, stacked under shelter, left to dry for months or years until it is ready. The carpenter watches the sky, for damp days slow the curing, and the crackle of the hearth is often needed to keep his stock sound. In winter, when fields lie fallow and other lab bow rest, the workshop hums with industry, plough handles repaired, barrels bound, sledges shaped for snow. In summer, the work spills outdoors, beams raised for barns, scaffolds built for the masons, ladders fashioned for fruit pickers. There are dangers in every craft. A saw can slip, a chisel can bite too deep, an axe may strike off its mark. The carpenter bears scars on his hands, calluses on his palms, the toughened skin of one who has long courted sharp steel. Yet with care, with steady eye and hand, the dangers are kept at bay, and what remains is the satisfaction of form emerging from formlessness. The smells of the shop are a world of their own. oak, sharp and tannic, pine, sweet and resinous, walnut, rich and deep. Smoke from the hearth mingles with these beeswax, rubbed into finished wood, leaves a faint honeyed note. To step inside is to be welcomed by a tape of scents that speak of labor and of home. In the evenings, when tools are hung back on their pegs and the shavings swept into piles, the carpenter rests on his bench. Around him stand the day laborers, a stool finished smooth, a gate ray for hanging, a wheel rim leaning against the wall. He runs his hand over a polished board, the grain glowing in the fading light, and feels the quiet pride of work well done. Not loud, not celebrated, but essential, woven into the village laths, surely there the beams into a roof. As night deeps her, the workshop grows still, the scent of wood lingering in the air. Tomorrow more logs will be split, more boards shaped, more tools set to their patient music. The carpenter work is never finished, for wood is always waiting, standing in the forest, stacked in the yard, lying laid on the bench. Yet in this endlessness lies comfort, the knowledge that with axe and saw, plane and chisel, the world can always be shaped anew, strong and useful, to shelter and serve those who live within it. Beyond the fields and workshops, the land rises into quarries and the village gives way to stone. Another labor waits. Here the air is sharper, ringing with the echo of hammers against rock. Dust hangs in pale veils, clinging to hair and beard, settling into every crease of cloth. It is the world of stonecutters and masons, those who draw strength from the earth itself, shaping it into walls, bridges, towers, and the soaring grace of churches. At dawn, the quarry is already awake. Men move among the rock faces, their tools catching the first light. Iron picks chip into seams, wedges are driven deep into cracks. Mallets strike with hollow thuds. The sound rolls across the valley in a steady cadence, stone answering each blow with a voice both dull and ringing. Chips scatter underfoot, and great blocks shift slowly, reluctantly, until at last they rake free with a groan that seems to come from the earth itself. The stonecutter's craft is harsh, but it begins with patience. They read the lines of the rock. A carpenter reads the grain of wood. Fissures and veins must be followed, faults avoided, layers pried apart without shattering. A misplaced blow can waste a day's work, turning a promising block into useless shards. So they work with care, listening, watching, feeling through their tools for the silent guidance hidden in the stone. Once freed, the blocks are trimmed with chisels and hammers. Dust rises in plumes, coating lips with grit, whitening eyebrows and lashes. Edges are squared, surfaces leveled, corners smoothed. Some stones are left rough for foundations, others carved into precise forms for arches and corners. The masons know the language of dimensions, the subtle mathematics of proportion and balance. Even without parchment or quill, their hands measure true, their eyes judge level, their strings and plumb lines find the straightness hidden within each block. When the blocks are read, they are hauled from the quarry to the building site. Oxen strain against wagons, wheels groan on rutted tracks, ropes creak, men guide the heavy loads. It is a slow procession, but with each journey the skeleton of a new wall rises higher. On scaffolds of timber, masons climb, hoisting stones with pulleys and windlasses. Mortar is mixed in troughs, lime, sand, water, stirred until it is thick and strong. With practiced hands, the masons spread the mortar, set the stone, tap it into place with mallet and chisel, and step back to judge the line. Bit by bit, the wall climbs skyward. In villages, their work is humble yet essential. Low walls enclose fields, cottages gain hearths and chimneys, bridges span streams. But in towns and cities, the mason's skill reaches for grandeur. Great churches rise, their towers stretching toward heaven, their windows framed by carved stone tracer. Castles spread across hilltops, their battlements cut from solid rock, their gates framed by arches that endure for centuries. Each block is anonymous, yet together they form monuments that define the landscape itself. Among the masons, there are those who carve while they build. Their chisels dance more delicately, shaping capitals with leaves and vines, saints with solemn faces, beasts with tongues curled and teeth bared. A gargoyle juts from a gutter, fierce yet comic the angel spreads wings above a doorway, still prayer. These carvers know stone not only weight and strength but a canvas. They coax life from hardness, turning silent blocks into stories that speak to all who pass. The work is hard on the body, shoulders ache from lifting, arms tremble from striking, lungs fill with dust that clings long after the day ends. Hands grow calloused, nails blackened, skin toughened like leather. Yet pride glows in the mason's eyes when they look up at what they have built. They know that long after they are gone, the walls will still stand, the arches will still curve, the carvings will still watch from their perches. Few crafts promise such endurance. There is danger, too. A stone may slip from ropes, crushing whatever lies beneath. Scaffolds can give way, hurling men to the ground. Dust blinds, sharp shards cut deep, weight exhausts. The masons work with caution born of necessity, checking knots, tightening braces, listening for the groan of timber under strain. Even so, accidents come, and the memory of them lingers in the minds of those who return to the work the next day. The rhythm of the quarry and the building site blends into the rhythm of the year. In winter, frost may halt work, making mortar brittle and tools brittle in the cold. In spring and summer, progress surges, walls rising quickly in the long days. Autumn brings urgency, for walls must be roofed before the rains. The seasons carve their own marks into the pace of stone. Faith shapes the work well. Before a cornerstone is laid, a priest blesses it, sprinkling holy water, murmuring prayers. Masquerading being mere stone, it becomes a sacred foundation, a promise that the labor will stand in God's sight. Masons, though often weary, feel the gravity of such moments. Their hands may be rough, their tunics plain, but their work is woven into sanctity itself. At midday, masons sit in the shade of their half-built wall, breaking bread, sharing cheese, drinking from flasks. Dust settles on their food, and they eat without complaint, brushing it away. They speak of weight and measure, of cracks and joints, of what still remains to build. Sometimes they fall into silence, each man resting in the shadow of the very work he has raised. The wall looms above, not oppressive but protective, a testament to their strength. When evening falls, tools are laid, chisels laid in order, hammers stacked, ropes coiled. The fire in the brazier dies down, the scaffold stands empty, and the wall waits in quiet for the morning. The quarry, too, falls silent, its stones resting until the next blow of iron. Yet in the stillness, one can feel the memory of labor, as if the very earth recalls the hands that shaped it. In the village square, as a stone trough holds water for cattle, or in the chapel wet, a carved arch frames the altar. People pass daily without always noticing the stone, but it is always there, holding, bearing, protecting. It is the silent companion of life, and it is the masons and stonecutters who have given it voice and shape. Thus their labor edges, heavy yet lasting, plain yet sacred. The world of stone is unyielding, yet under human hands it bends into walls, bridges, and towers. It carries the mark of chisels long vanished, the rhythm of hammers long stilled. In the cool silence of churches, in the strength of castles, in the quiet dignity of cottages, the work of the masons whispers still, reminding all who enter these stones were once earth, and by labor they became shelter, strength, and story. In the quiet corners of cottages and the busy lofts of workshops, another kind of labor hums a softer rhythm than hammer or chisel, yet no less vital. It is the work of spinners, weavers, and cloth makers whose hands transform fleece and flax into thread, thread into fabric, and fabric into garments that clothe every soul from cradle to grave. If stone gives the village its walls and wood its shelter, then cloth gives it warmth and modesty, color and texture, comfort against cold winds and biting frost. The journey begins in the fields and pastures. Sheep grazed by shepherds return with fleeces thick and heavy. Each spring, when shearing guns, the wool is then in great piles, warm from the animal, smelling of lanolin and grass. Women and children wash it in streams, beating it against stones, rinsing away dirt until it lies clean and soft. Flax, too, has its season. Pulled from the fields, it is retted in ponds, the stems soaking until fibers loosen, dry stalks are broken, combed, and teased into silky strands. From such beginnings, rough, earthy, humble, the fine work of cloth is born. In cottages, spinning is constant. A woman may sit by the hearth, distaff tucked beneath her arm, twisting fibers into thread with steady fingers. A spindle whirls at her knee, catching the twist, drawing it downward in a long, thin line. The hum of the spindle, the faint squeak of flax fibers, the soft murmur of wool being drawn out, all blend with the crackle of the fire, the clatter of pots, the laughter of children. To spin is to fill the pauses of the day, while bread bakes, while water heats, while stories are told. Thread accumulates slowly, like hours themselves, each length a testament to patience. The loom waits for this thread in larger homes and workshops. Great looms stand upright, beams, stouts, tree trunks, their frames hung with taut warp threads. In smaller cottages, simple horizontal looms stretch between pegs, easy to set up and take down. Whatever the form, the principle is the same threads held in tension, crossed by a shuttle that carries the weft back and forth. The shuttle flies, the beater thuds, and cloth grows inch by inch, a fabric woven not only of wool or flax, but of time itself. The sound of weaving is steady and hip-knock, the shuttle soft thwack, the beat of the reed, the treadle click beneath the weaver foot. It is a rhythm that lulls children to sleep, that accompanies talk between wind, that fills the hours until daylight fades. The weaver eyes are sharp, watching for broken threads, adjusting tension, keeping patterns true. A misstep may warp the whole piece, that skill turns chaos into order, loose fibers into strength. Color hoods from dyers, who wield their own craft like alchemy. In steaming vats, threads or finished cloth are soaked in infusions of plants and minerals, madder roots for red, woad leaves for blue, weld for yellow, oak galls for black. The process stains not only the fibers but the very hands of the dyer, leaving them rocked in shades of the rainbow. The air of the dye work is pungent, acrid, sometimes unpleasant, but the result is glory hues that brighten market stalls, garments that glow against gay stone streets. To wear dye cloth is to carry the colors of earth and plant transformed by human labor. In towns, guilds of weavers, fullers, and dyers guard their crafts fiercely. Rules are written how wide a cloth must be, how many threads per inch, how colors must be set so they do not fade. Apprentices learn at the looms, journeymen ply their trade, masters set their seals upon bolts of cloth. Pride runs deep in these guilds, for cloth is not only necessity but trade. Flemish looms produce fine linen prized across Europe. English wool, thick and strong, travels by ship to distant ports. Silks from the south shimmer in courts and churches, their threads finer than a hair, their price dearer than gold. The Stielana Hosni, the Lukapa, the Twitter listen with the Schalgeschlids through the Kleins. Medieval Europe was a world of villages and fields, rolling countryside divided by narrow dirt paths, rivers winding quietly through forests, and clusters of small houses where people gathered together for safety and for community. The village was the heart of life for most people. Cities existed, but they were rare, and only a small portion of the population ever lived in them. Noticing details and lingering on the small things that made up ordinary life. Perhaps as you listen, you will feel your eyes grow heavy. Perhaps the slow rhythm of the words will carry you into sleep. And that is perfectly fine. In villages, the work is more humble, but no less essential. Every household spins, weaves, sews, shirts, hose, cloaks, blankets, all born from cottage labor. Children learn early, fingers fumbling at first, then dipped with spindle and needle. Men wear tunics of coarse wool, women dresses of flax or hemp, children garments patched and repatched until the cloth itself remembers generations of wear. Finery is rare, reserved for feast days, a ribbon dyed blue, a cloak lined with fur, a gown embroidered with bright threads. Yet even the plainest cloth is valued, for without it the body shivers, and the hearth warmth is lost the moment one steps outside. The fuller work gives cloth its final strength. Newly woven wool is loose, its fibers prone to unravel. Fullers soak it, pound it, stretch it until it thick hits into firm, dense fabric. In towns, great water-driven hammers beat the cloth in villages. Feet and hands do the work, trampling and kneading in tubs of water mixed with fuller's earth or even stale urine. It is hard, messy labor, but from it comes cloth that endure, that hold its shape through years of wear. Embroidery, too, has its place. Skilled fingers add beauty, wit, utility suffices. Borders are edged with vines and flowers. Saints are stitched onto altar cloths. Initials mark dowry linen. Such decoration is more than vanity. It is pride, devotion, and memory. Sew into fabric, a mother may embroider her child's shirt with charms against illness, or a bride may stitch her gown with patterns her mother taught her, each thread a whisper of continuity. Cloth shapes not only garments, but lives. It provides banners for festivals, sails for ships, bags for grain, curtains for churches. It marks status, the rough homespun of peasants, the finer linen of merchants, the silks and velvets of nobles. It carries identity, memory, and even law, for certain fabrics are reserved for certain ranks, and sumptuary codes remind all who may wear what. Yet beyond these divisions, the essence remains. Cloth is survival, warmth, dignity. At night, spinning wheels slow, looms fall silent. The day thread is wound, the shuttle rests, the cloth is folded and set aside. The floor is swept of stray fibers, the fire burns low, and the workshop grows still. But in the quiet, one can still sense the hum of labor, if the threads themselves remember the touch of the hand. Thus the weavers, spinners, and cloth makers give their gift to the world, warmth against the cold, color against the gay, softness against the hardness of stone and iron. Their work may seem humble, carried out in corners and by hearthlight, but without it life would be naked, raw, exposed. In the endless turning of spindle and shuttle, in the patient weaving of thread into fabric, they cloak the world in comfort, carrying forward a craft ed old as memory and ed enduring in time. Before most of the village has opened its shutters to the morning, the baker is already at work. His oven glows in the dim light, its mouth a small sun in the heart of the town. The air is thick with the smell of rising dough, yeast, flour, and warmth mingling into a perfume that floats through the lanes and draws children close, even before the loaves are ready. The baker day begins long before dawn and ends long after the last crumbs are sold, for bread is life, and without his labor the village would go hungry. Kneads the dough with steady, practiced motions, pressing and folding, turning and pressing again. His arms are dusted white, his apron coated with flour, his hair powdered though with snow. The rhythm is as familiar to him its breath. Each lump of dough will become a loaf or a round, each round a family meal. He shapes them with swift hands, laying them on wooden boards, scoring them with a knife so they may rise evenly in the oven heat. The oven itself is a marvel of patience. Built of stone and clay, it holds the memory of fire long after the flames are gone. The baker has stoked it through the night, feeding it billets of wood until the walls glow with hidden heat. Now the embers are raked aside, the ashes brushed clean, and the first loaves slid in on long paddles. The door is sealed, the warmth trapped inside, and for a while there is nothing to do but wait. Outside, the square begins to stir. Farmers bring their eggs, butchers open their stalls, milkmaids carry pails to sell. Yet all eyes turn toward the bakery when the smell deep pet, rich and golden, drifting on the morning air. It is the smell of comfort, of fullness, of hunger soon to be eased. When the oven door opens, a cloud of steam escapes, and the loaves are drawn out brown, crisp, their crusts crackling faintly. The baker lines them on shelves, each one gleaming with promise. Bread is not on alike. Some loaves are coarse, dark with rye or barley, meant for peasants and laborers. Others are lighter, made with wheat, their crumbs soft and white, reserved for feast days or the tables of the well-to-do. There are flatbreads baked quickly on stones, rolls shaped for travelers, and great round loaves baked for households that must last a week. Each has its place, each its own worth, and the baker knows how to craft them own. Payment, too, takes many forms. Some bring coin, others barter eggs, milk, or vegetables. A farmer might trade grain for bread already baked from it. No matter the means, all who come to the bakery carry the same need sustenance. The baker provides, his shelves emptying quickly bead hands reach for loaves, his baskets carried out into the market to feed the crowd. But bread is only half the tale. The other half belongs to ale, the drink that slakes thirst, nourishes bodies, and fills the taverns with warmth and cheer. In cottages and larger brew houses alike, the brewer tends his vats, watching over the transformation of grain into drink. The process begins with malt. Barley is soaked, spread on floors, turned until it sprouts, then dried over a gentle heat. This malt is crushed and mixed with water in great tubs, stirred until it yields its sweetness. From the dark mash rises a scent of grain, earthy and rich. The liquid is drawn off, boiled, and flavored perhaps with herbs, perhaps with hops if they are known in that land and time. The boiling kills what is harmful, leaves behind what is nourishing, and fills the room with a steam that clings to walls and hair alike. Then Pud's fermentation. The liquid is cooled and set in barrels, yeast added or simply caught from the air, and slowly it changes. Bubbles rise, foam forms, a living froth that speaks of transformation. Day by day, the brewer checks it, listening to the soft hiss, tasting for strength and flavor. When it is ready, it is racked into casks, the froth stilled, the liquid clear. Pale ales, dark ales, strong brews, small beers for children, all flow from the same patient craft. Ale is more than drink, it is sustenance. Water is not always safe, but ale, brewed and boiled, is clean. Even the weakest brew carries strength enough to nourish, filling bellies when food is scarce, warming bodies in the cold taverns sell it. Feasts slow with it, cottages rely on it daily. It is the drink of work and rest, of celebration and mourning, of ordinary days and holy days alike. The brewer yard is filled with signs of this craft. Bars line the walls, their hoops tight and shining. Steam rises from vats, spilling into the street. Grain sacks lie piled in corners, and the smell of yeast hangs heavy in the air. Dogs and children linger, drawn by warmth and bustle. When a cask is tapped, the first froth runs lively, spilling foam onto the floor before settling into the deep amber liquid that fills mugs and hearts alike. Together, the baker and the brewer weave a kind of alchemy. Grain becomes bread and drink, body and spirit. Their crafts mirror one another. Both begin with seed, sown in the earth. Both demand patience. Both require a watchful eye to catch the moment when change is ready. In their work, hunger and thirst are answered, and life itself is sustained. At dawn, the baker sweeps his floor, gathers crumbs for the head, banks the embers of his oven. The brewer leans against a cask, tasting the day work, listening to the soft creak of wood the liquid within settles. Both are weary, arms heavy, eyes stung with smoke and steam, yet both know that without their labor the village would falter. Families rake their bread at the tail, children sip small ale from wooden cups, and the world feels whole. The crafts of flour and froth do not glitter like gold or rise like stone towers, yet they are closer to the heart. For in every meal, in every swallow, lies the quiet devotion of those who shaped grain into sustenance. Thus the baker oven and the brewer vat stand in twin hearths of the village, one glowing with fire, the other bubbling with life. Their work is humble, yet it binds the community together, feeding body and spirit alike. And when night falls and the smell of fresh bread lingers in the air, and the tavern hums with laughter over mugs of ale, the world of work feels rich indeed, sustained by these simple yet profound lab-by. If the baker world is warm with bread and the brewer steep in froth, the world of leather is different, earthy, pungent, and enduring. It begins in the tannery, whose hides from the butcher are transformed into leather, and continues in the cobbler's shop, where that leather is stitched and shaped into the boots and shoes that carry the village through field and forest, season after season. The tannery lies at the village edge near running water, for its work is messy and strong-scented. Here raw hides are soaked, scraped, and steeped in vats. The smell is sharp, acrid with lime, sour with fermenting bark, heavy with the musk of animals. To Zen, it is unpleasant to the tanner. It is simply the smell of his trade, familiar flour to the baker or smoke to the smith. The process is slow, demanding patience. First, the hides are soaked in lime to loosen hair and flesh. Workers scrape them clean with curved knives. The sound of wet rasp fibers are stripped away. Then the hides are washed, beaten, and stretched on frames. Next comes the tanning itself, hides lowered into great pits filled with water and oak bark. The tannins from the bark seep slowly into the skin, strengthening it, preserving it, turning it supple and durable. This soaking may take weeks, even months. Men stir the vats with poles, lift hides dripping and heavy, shift them from weaker to stronger solutions. Over time, pale skin darken into warm brown, soft to the touch yet tough enough to endure years of wear. Children, some creep near the tannery and wrinkle their noses, laughing at the odor. Yet they know their shoes and belts come from this place, their satchels and straps, even the parchment upon which prayers and records are written. The tanner work is unglamorous but indispensable, turning waste into necessity, fragility into strength. Once the leather is ready, it passes to the cobbler. His workshop smells different, sharper, with notes of cut hide, beeswax, and oil. Here scraps lie piled in corners, awls and needles glint on the bench, and last wooden forms shaped like feet stand in rows along the wall. The cobbler sits bent over his work, leather stretched across his lap, stitching with waxed thread. His fingers are nimble, used by years of gripping needles and pressing seams flat. Shoes are his craft, and he knows their secrets. Soles must be thick enough to withstand stony paths, uppers supple enough to bend with the step. Stitching must be tight, heels strong, seams smooth so they be not chafe. He works slowly, carefully, testing each seam with a tug, trimming each edge with a knife. Boots for farmers, shoes for children, slippers for elders, each pair fitted to its purpose, each one carrying the mark of his skill. The cobbler repairs much in the fast of hine. The cobbler repairs one in brilliance, the long villas. The cobbler repairs much and drones for community. Repairs nine, Cobbler the sunny mine. This road you enjoy by the street is beyond its first wear, each patch a testament to thrift and craft. Children wait impatiently, their small shoes are repaired, hopping on one foot, eager to be off again into the lane. Tools surround him, knives for cutting, awls for piercing, bristles bound to thread, hammers for tapping nails. He sharpens edges on stones, soft and leather with oil, warms wax over the hearth. The rhythm of his day is measured by the steady pull of thread through hide, the faint squeak of seams tightening, the tap of hammer on sole. It is quieter than the smithy, than the mill, but no less full of purpose. Leather serves more than feet. The cobbler also fashions belts, pouches, reins, and harness. Farmers rely on straps that will not rake under strain, riders on bridles that guide with strength yet gentleness. Every household owns some piece of his labor, a sheath for a knife, a binding for a book, a strap for a tool. Even the church depends on his craft for reliquaries wrapped in leather, missals bound in sturdy covers, bells hung from cured straps. Seasons shape his work. In summer, shoes wear quickly on dry, dusty roads. In autumn, mud seeps into seams and soles must be renewed. Winter demands boots lined with fur or stuffed with straw to keep feet warm. In spring, when rains return, villagers crowd his door with shoes soaked in splitting, needing quick repair. The cobbler bends to each task without complaint, knowing that to walk unshod is misery. The social life of the workshop is lively. Neighbors linger, sharing talk while they wait. Children peer curiously at scraps, hoping for a piece of leather to play with. The cobbler himself often knows the tales of the whole village, for everyone passes through his door sooner or later. Yet he is discreet, smiling, nodding, rarely repeating what he hears. His work speaks louder than words, and his reputation rests not on gossip, but on stitches that hold and soles that endure. When evening comes, the cobbler lays aside his tools, polishes the last pair of boots, and sets them neatly in a row. The tannery by the water grows quiet, hides soaking in their vats until the next stirring. The smell lingers, faint but persistent, a reminder of labor that never ceases. Shoes line shelves, ready to be claimed, each one awaiting the feet that carry it into field, forest, or town. Thus the crafts of the tanner and the cobbard, though less celebrated than stone or song, sustain daily life in their own way. They stand between the barefoot and the road, between the rawhide and the enduring harness, between fragility and resilience. Their work may smell strong, their stitches may seem plain, yet in each seam lies dignity, in each sole security, in each strap the quiet assurance that the world may be walked in safely. So the world of work continues, bread baked, ale brewed, leather stitched, each craft weaving into the other, until the village is clothed, nourished, and sustained. Where the land gives way to water, another world of work unfolds, less steady than field or forge, more fickle than stone or wood, yet just and vital. Rivers, lakes, and seas provide food, trade, and travel, but they demand courage and skill in return. Along the banks and harbors, fishermen and sailors rise with the dawn, their lives bound to currents, winds, and tides. At first light, the river mists cling low to the water, gay and ghostly. Fishermen push their small boats from the shore. The hulls creaking, they settle into the current. Oars dips quietly, breaking the mirrored surface into ripples that widen and fade. Nets are coiled in the bottom, smelling of tar and fish, ropes damp and rough in calloused hands. The air is sharp with the scent of waterweed and mud, tinged with the faint sweetness of reeds. The casting of nets is art. With one practiced motion, a fisherman heaves the weighted circle into the air. It opens wide, arcs gracefully, and settles upon the water with a soft slap. Slowly it sinks, the weights pulling it down, enclosing whatever swims below. Then comes the haul, steady, straining, muscles taut till the net is drawn back in. Silver bodies flash in the morning light, twisting and thrashing, scales scattering at coins. The catch spills onto the planks, flopping and gasping, soon stilled into silence. Other methods serve too. Lines bait with hooks, pots lowered for eels or crabs, weirs built from stakes and brush to funnel fish into traps. Each method has its season, its favored waters, its own secrets passed from father to son, neighbor to neighbor. Some days the catch is plentiful, baskets heavy with perch, pike, or trout. Other days the nets return nearly empty, and the household must make do with little. Fishermen know the truth of uncertainty. The water gives these it tid, never by command. By the shore, women wait with baskets to clean and salt the fish. Knives flash in the light, guts tossed to scavenging gulls, flesh packed in coarse salt to last through winter. Smokehouses glow, racks of herring and eel are hung above smoldering fires, the air rich with their oily fragrance. Children help by carrying buckets, gathering wood for fires, chasing away cats too bold in their hunger. The work is communal, a chain of hands ensuring that nothing is wasted. Beyond the rivers and lakes lies the sea, vast and restless. Here the sailor takes his craft, larger than the fisher skiff, stout enough to bear both cargo and men. In the harbor, ships creak against their moorings, sails furled tight, masts swaying with the swell. The smell is different here, salt sharp on the air, mingled with pitch and tar, the faint sweetness of foreign spices whiting from cargoes already landed. The sailor day begins with ropes and rigging. Lines are coiled, sails unfurled, knots checked. The deck shudders men haul together, voices rising in chant to keep time. Pull, heave, set. The anchor lifts with a groan of chain, water dripping in silver streams knee. It clears the surface. Then the sail bellies with wind, snapping and straining, and the ship leans into motion. The land falls away, and the open water stretches before them like a shifting plain. Life at sea is harsh, but filled with its own rhythms. The wind whistles through the rigging, waves slap against the hull, gulls wheel overhead. Sailors climb the rigging with bare feet and strong hands adjusting canvas to catch the wind just right. Others bail water from the bill, scrub decks, mend ropes, or tend the tiller. Meals are simple hard bread, dried fish, ale stored in barrels. Nights are long watches, eyes scanning the horizon for land, stars, or storms. The sea demands respect. Storms can rise suddenly, turning calm waters into chaos. Waves crash over the deck, sails tear, ropes snap, men cling to whatever they can. A ship may founder in minutes, its cargo and crew swallowed by the depths. Yet the rewards of successful voyages are great. Barrels of salt fish for distant markets, casks of wine from southern coasts, wool carried across channels, spices and silks arriving from far ports. The sailor lives between peril and plenty, between the mercy of wind and the promise of trade. Villages by the sea depend on both fisherman and sailor. The catch feeds the people. The ships bring goods that cannot be made at home. Markets bustle with salted herring, fresh mussels, dried cod. Merchants display wares wrapped in cloth or packed in straw, whispering of journeys to places most will never see. Children play with shells and bits of driftwood, dreaming of ships that vanish beyond the horizon. Faith cling closely to this world. Before a voyage, sailors knead in the chapel, candles flickering ere prayers rise for calm seas and safe return. Fishermen mark their boats with simple crosses or saints' tokens, believing them to guard against storms. When tragedy comes, as it sometimes must, the village gathers to mourn, women in black shawls standing by the shore, eyes searching the waves as though still hoping. Yet life resumes, for hunger does not wait, and the water calls again at dawn. There is beauty, too, in this labor. Dawn paints the sea with colors no hand weave, gold and rose shimmering across the ripples. Nets newly cast gleam like spiderwebs, strung with jewels droplets scatter in the light. At night, the sea glows faintly with stars reflected, or with phosphorescence that trails behind the oars, as though the water itself were alive with fire. In such moments, fishermen and sailors feel not only toil but wonder, a closeness to mystery as deep as the waters they work upon. When evening falls, boats return, their hulls heavy with the day catch, nets hang to dry, sails are furled, oars stacked, ropes coiled. The harbor grows quiet, broken only by the creak of wood and the soft slap of waves. Families greet their men, baskets are carried home, fires lit for cooking. In taverns near the shore, sailors gather with mugs of ale, telling tales of storms survived, distant lands glimpsed, or fish so large they seemed like monsters of legend. Laughter rises, mugs clink, and for a while the hardships are forgotten in fellowship. Thus the labor of water endures, sometimes generous, sometimes cruel, always essential. Fishermen and sailors live by patience, strength, and faith, their lives bound to the shifting moods of rivers and seas. In their nets and sails lies sustenance for villages and towns, trade for markets, stories for hearthsides. Their work may seem uncertain, but it binds land and water, hunger and hope, in a rhythm at old time. So, when the village sleeps, the river still runs, the tide still turns, the sea still breathes. Boats creak at their moorings, nets dry in the night air, stars wheel above the dark horizon. Tomorrow, the oars will dip again, the sails will fill, and the endless work of water will begin anew. Not on labor in the medieval world rang with hammer or clattered with loom. Much of it was quieter, woven into the fabric of daily life so seamlessly that it could be overlooked, yet it was constant, indispensable, and largely borne by whim. Their work was not confined to one place, but spread across hearth and field, cottage and bye, spinning wheel and cradle. It was the rhythm beneath all other rhythms, the unceasing labor that kept households alive and villages whole. At dawn, while men led oxen to the fields or shouldered tools, wind bent to the hearth. They raked the embers banked overnight, coaxing flame back to life with kindling, blowing softly until fire flared. Pots were set to boil, porridge stirred, bread from yesterday baking sliced and shared. Children were roused, dressed, and fed, their hair combed, their small quarrels hushed. The day first work was nourish, given before the sun had climbed far above the horizon. Water was a daily burden. From wells or streams, wind carried it in buckets, the yoke pressing into their shoulders, the slough heavy with each step. This water fed the hearth, filled the troughs, soaked the flax and brewed the ale. Clothes were scrubbed against stones in its flow, hands chapped red by cold. No craft could proceed without it, and so each morning the steady path to water and back was traced, often many times over. Spinning was nearly constant. Even when walking, a woman might carry a distaff, drawing wool or flax into thread while her feet followed the road. By firelight in the evening, spindles whirled, fibers twisted into strong, fine lines. This thread would later be woven, sewn, or knitted, but the first step was endless and often unseen. The steady, patient making of thread, one length at a time. So central was this task that the word spinster became not only a description of work, but of identity. In the dairies, hands were equally busy. Cows and goats were milked at dawn, their warm froth strained and set aside. Cream was skimmed, churns set in motion, butter came slowly, the rhythmic plunge of dasher into churn, arms weary but persistent until golden lumps formed from pale cream. Cheese required more care still, curds cut, pressed, salted, aged. These foods sustained families through winter, and their making was a daily essential art. Brewing small, ale was another household duty. Though great brewers crafted strong drink for taverns, many women brewed lighter ales at home, safe for children and essential for meals. Grain was steeped, boiled, cooled, and fermented in small casks, tended with the same diligence as bread. The result was mild and nourishing, a drink that sustained laborers in the fields and gave warmth on cold evenings. Herbal knowledge, too, belonged often to women in gardens. They tended sage, thyme, rosemary, rue, and dozens more, not only for flavoring food, but for healing wounds and easing sickness. They brewed teas for fevers, poultices for burns, ointments for aches. Their skill was part memory, part tradition, handed down from mother to daughter, woven into stories and recipes. It was seldom written, yet it lived in every cottage, a treasury of hidden medicine. Child rearing was a labor without pause. Infants swaddled, rocked, soothed. Toddlers watched, they played near hearth or threshold. Older children guided into chores of their own. Songs were sung, soft lullabies at night, work songs during the day, chants to make the endless tasks lighter. A mother voice was constant as her hands, shaping her children just surely she shaped bread or thread. Women work reached into the fields well. At harvest they swung sickles, bound sheaves, gleaned the fallen ears of grain. In spring they planted beans, peas, and cabbages in small plots near the cottage. They tended gardens, fed pigs, dead eggs from etch-hens. In times of war or absence, when men were gone, wind bore the full weight of plough and sowing, proving their strength with necessity demanded. Inside the cottage, the rhythm of care never ceased. Floors swept, beds remade, clothes patched and mended, needles flashed in dim light, stitching torn hems, reinforcing seams. Woolen cloaks were thickened with fulling, stockings darned, hit knitted. Nothing was wasted, every scrap of cloth or leather turned to sew small lees. These tasks were humble, invisible perhaps, that they carried dignity. The quiet assurance that a family would be clothed, warm, and cared for. In the evenings, after the day labor, when vid with neighbors, they spun and sewed together, their voices mingling with the whir of spindles. Stories were told, news shared, laughter rising even amid weariness. Children dozed in laps, lulled by the steady murmur of work. These gatherings wove more than thread, they wove community, binding lives together with invisible bonds. Festivals and holy days brought different duties. Women baked special breads, brewed stronger ales, embroidered banners, dressed children in their best. They decorated homes with flowers or rare green, prepared food for feasts, tended to guests. Their work ensured that celebration was possible, that joy had form, well-led spirit. When death came, wind hands were still there. They washed the body, wrapped it in cloth, prepared it for burial. They keened and prayed, comforted the living, and ensured that grief was met with care aid well as sorrow. From birth to death, their labor rocked every transition, steady, unheralded, yet essential. It is easy to overlook such work, for it leaves little monument. There are no towers built of spinning, no bridges of butter, no castles of thread. Yet without it, the towers would stand empty, the bridges unused, the castles cold. Women labor sustained life itself, hidden yet foundational, silent yet unceasing. When the day ended and others slept, many women still worked nursing infants, tending fires, mending loads by faint lamplight. Their rest was brief, their tasks endless. Yet within these hidden labors lay resilience and strength, a quiet heroism that held the village together more surely than any wall or lord command. Thus the world of work was never only in field or forge, it was also at the hearth, in the cradle, in the garden, in the steady turn of spindle and the soft voice of a lullaby. Women hands, tireless and often unseen, carried the weight of survival with patience and grace. And though their work may not et like hammer on anvil, it endures in every thread of cloth, every loaf of bread, every life sustained. In the bustle of towns, amid narrow streets and markets thick with noise, there rises another kind of order, the guilds. They are more than gatherings of craftsmen. They are families of skill, communities bound, not by blood, but by craft. Within their halls, work is honored, secrets are kept, and pride in labor is guarded with solemn oaths. To belong to a guild is to find a place in the fabric of town life, to be recognized not merely as a worker, but a bearer of tradition and a custodian of skill. The guild hall itself is a landmark. Its doors are heavy oak, banded with iron, its walls hung with banners that show the craft emblem, a pair of scissors for weavers, a hammer and shoe for smiths, a wheel for coopers, a loaf for bakers. Inside, long tables stretch beneath rafters darkened by years of smoke. Benches waits for masters and journeymen, for apprentices eager to learn. At one end stands a chest bound with iron straps, the guild treasure and charter kept safe within. It is not treasure of gold alone, but of rules, rights, and traditions, documents that give the guild its authority. To enter such a brotherhood or sisterhood in certain crafts requires a path of years. Apprenticeship begins in youth. A boy of 12, or sometimes younger, is bound by contract to a master. He leaves his family hearth and lives in his master house, serving not only at the bench or forge, but at the table and in the yard. He learns first to sweep shavings, stoke fires, carry water. Slowly he is trusted with tools, his hands guided to cut, stitch, hammer, or weave. His hours are long, his rest short, yet through such years he learns the bones of the craft. When apprenticeship is finished, he becomes a journeyman free to travel from town to town, to work in other shops, to broaden his skill. His name comes from the French journée, for he is paid by the day. Journeymen wander roads with bundles on their backs, seeking employment under distant masters, carrying with them the marks of their craft and the hope of one day achieving mastery. They learn not only technique, but style, absorbing the subtle differences of region and tradition. To become a master is no simple step. The journeyman must create a masterpiece, a work that proves his skill beyond doubt. A carpenter may build a chest with cunning joints, a goldsmith a chalice finely wrought, a weaver a cloth of precise width and weave. The guild elders examine it with critical eyes, weighing every seam and stroke. If the work is deemed worthy, the journeyman is admitted ad master, allowed to keep his own shop, take apprentices, and place his mark upon his wares. It is a moment of pride not only for him but for his family, for mastery brings honor and security. The guild governs more than training. It sets rules for quality, ensuring that no craftsman cheats by using poor materials or careless work. It sets prices, preventing unfair competition. It cares for members in hardship, offering aid to widows and orphans, burying the dead with dignity. At festivals, the guild marches together beneath its banners, members robed or badged with their symbols, showing pride in their labor before all the town. Each guild has its secrets, its methods passed on to members, the dyeing of certain colors, the tempering of steel, the weaving of intricate patterns, all guarded closely, shared only within the brotherhood. To betray these secrets is to risk expulsion, a disgrace that leaves a craftsman adrift, stripped of honor and livelihood. Such secrecy protects not only trade but tradition, preserving skills handed down through generations. The pride of craft shows itself in the smallest deals. A mason leaves his mark, chiseled discreetly on a stone high in a cathedral wall, unseen by most but known to his brethren. A goldsmith engraves a tiny symbol inside a ring, a signature of skill. A weaver weaves his name into the selvage of a fine cloth. These marks are not vanity but testimony. I was thee, I shaped this, I upheld the craft. Guild life is not without its tensions. Disputes arise between masters and journeymen over wages, between guilds themselves over rights and precedents. At times, guilds clash with town councils or lords, defending their privileges fiercely. Yet at their heart, they remain communities of labor, uniting those whose lives are defined by work. In the evenings, guild halls glow with candlelight, members gather for feasts, long table laden with bread, meat, and ale. Prayers are said, toasts raised to saints and patrons, songs sung that tell of labor dignity. Laughter echoes from the rafters, apprentices wide-eyed at the fellowship they long to join, masters proud of the brotherhood they uphold. These moments bind the guild not only in rule but in friendship, weaving community surely ray, any loom weaves thread. Guilds also serve ladders of aspiration. For a peasant son, apprenticeship may open doors to a more secure life. For a journeyman, mastery may mean not only honor, but independence, the right to hang his own sign, to be called master in his own right. For towns themselves, guilds bring wealth and prestige, their crafts sought in distant markets, their banners bright at festivals. Beyond all these roles, the guild preserves something deeper, the pride of work itself, to shape a beam, to temper a blade, to weave a cloth, to bake a loaf. These are not only tasks, but call-ins. The guild affirms that dignity, declaring that labor is worthy of respect, that skill deserves honor, that tradition must be kept alive. As night falls, the guild hall doors are closed, the chest stacked, the banners folded. Yet within homes and workshops across the town, guild members still labor, hammers ringing, shuttles flying, ovens glowing. Their pride does not rest with the hall but lives in every act of craft. Tomorrow apprentices will rise to fetch water, journeymen to seek their day hire, masters to guide their shops. The rhythm of labor continues, steady and strong, carrying forward the pride of guild and craft alike. Thus the guilds stand in the world of work in both shield and beacon, shielding their members with fellowship and fairness, beacons of skill that shine through generations. Their legacy is not only in charters and halls, but in the enduring crafts that clothe, shelter, and sustain life itself. The day of work in the medieval world is long, stretching from the gay of dawn to the deepening blue of twilight. Yet even the busiest day must come to an end. As the sun lowers and shadows lengthen across fields, lanes, and rooftops, the sounds of labor soften. Tools are laid aside, hearths are stoked for warmth, and the village exhales into evening. In the fields, oxen are unyoked, their heavy breath rising in clouds. They are led back to byres, ploughs rest at the edge of furrows, their iron tips dark with soil. Farmers lean on gates, shoulders aching, satisfied with the day progress. In pastures, sheep gather close, driven into pens by barking dogs, the soft bleating of lambs answered by mothers. Flocks settle, and the meadow, busy since dawn, grows still. From the smithy comes the last strike of hammer on iron, the final hiss of metal plunged into water. Sparks fade into embers, bellows creak one last time, and the forge cools in darkness. The carpenter sweeps curls of shavings from his bench, hangs tools on pegs, and runs a hand over smooth timber that the wait for tomorrow. The weaver folds her cloth, the shuttle set down with care, threads stretched and read to continue at first light. The mill slows, wheel turning lazily. The sluice is closed. Stones grind more softly, then cease. The last sacks of flour are tied and carried home. The miller sweeping his floor clean, listening to the hush of water returning to its quiet course. In the baker shop, loaves are sold, crumbs brushed from the counter, ovens banked. The day bread is eaten in cottages, whose laughter mingles with the smell of stew, and mugs of ale pass from hand to hand. Women work which has never ceased. Soft, too, cradles are rocked, butter churns are set aside, laundry hung by the hearth dries in the glow, spindles still turn for a while, wearing, quietly bathed. Stories are told by lamplight, children are washed, tucked beneath woolen blankets, soothed by lullabies sung in gentle voices. The burdens of the day do no end entirely, but they ease, lightened by rest and companionship. In towns, guild halls empty of their members, apprentices return to masters' homes, journeymen gather in taverns, masters lock their shops, banners that hung bright in festival now rest in chests, but the pride of craft lingers in the hum of voices, in the steady content of hands that have worked well. In harbors, sails are furled, nets are hung to dry, ships creak gently do they rock in the tide, sail low, step onto solid ground, grateful for the steadiness beneath their feet. Fishermen carry their catch home, the day lab for feeding tomorrow meals. In darkness deep peep, faith folds itself round the village, bells toll the evening hour, calling all to prayer. Candles flicker in chapels, voices rise in hymns of thanks, gratitude offered for safe labor, for bread on the table, for shelter through the night. Some kneel by bedsides, whispering quiet petitions, others trace a cross upon their children's foreheads. The rhythm of work is joined to the rhythm of devotion, both flowing together into rest. The sounds of night take the pace of day. Crickets sing in hedges, owls call from barns, dogs settle by doors. The murmur of conversation drifts from cottages, fading gradually into silence. Stars brighten above, clear and countless, their steady light a canopy over the sleeping world. Moonlight glimmers on rooftops, on water, on the paths that we walked again with the coming dawn. The village lies at peace, Yet within it rest the echoes of labor, the furrow waiting for seed, the edval waiting for the next blow, the loom waiting for the next shuttle flight. Work does not end, it pauses, holding its breath until morning. For now there is comfort in stillness, in warmth, in the pheasants of family and neighbor. Thus the world of work, so varied and unceasing, folds gently into night. Its strength lies not only in toil, but in rhythm, the cycle of effort and rest, of burden and release. In the quiet of evening, one can sense the harmony of all labors joined, farmer and miller, smith and carpenter, weaver and baker, cobbler and sailor, mother and child. Each thread of work, visible or hidden, weaves into the fabric of life. The sleep draws near, the memory of the day lingers softly, not in the ache of muscles or the grime of sweat, but in the knowledge that life is sustained, that tomorrow will come, and with it the chance to labor anew. The village dreams beneath its blanket of stars, the tools of work resting, the people at peace. Ends the day, and so ends this journey through labor and craft. The world of work in medieval life, with the sounds and scents, hardships and satisfactions, settles into silence, leaving only the steady comfort of rest.